Why'd he pick you?
I could just say that sentence.
So, can you ask him to introduce himself, and then ask him about if he ever believed he was changing his sexual orientation.
Okay. So, how do I do that? Who are you?
My name is Jacob Wilson, and formerly at Missouri, and now I'm living in Iowa, in Des Moines.
Yeah, and you were a part of Love in Action?
I went to Love in Action in the summer of 2005, pretty much during the height of the controversy and all the protests.
Yeah, so while you were there, now was Love in Action your only ex-gay ministry?
Honestly, no. And I didn't realize this till actually the Irvine conference. I guess I just kind of buried it away, but when I was 16 years old, I came out to my parents, and to say it nicely, it didn't go very well.
Right.
They were not very receptive, and they made my life very difficult, and I actually attempted suicide.
Oh, okay.
And while in the hospital, my mom made sure a Baptist counselor saw me.
I see.
And he gave her, well, actually, in a few sessions we had, he brought out the book Bringing Up Boys by Dr. Dobson, of course.
Okay.
And so I guess that actually was kind of the beginning of the ex-gay movement in my life. And so even at the age of 16, I was being told that, you can change, this is possible.
Okay.
So
while you were a part of that and you were working the program, did you ever come to a point where you really thought your sexual orientation was changing?
I feel like I really did drink the Kool-Aid at one point. You see all these other people around you, your friends, people who are your only support. And some of them who say that, their attractions are going away, or at least they think they are, or they're talking themselves into it. And I knew that I still had my attractions, but basically what the staff was telling me is that it's a gradual process, and so that every day that I have one slight less attraction, I'm making progress. And so with that ideology, I guess I was kind of convincing myself, or I was telling myself over and over again that, this is working, this is working, this is working. In one-on-one counseling sessions, and even in group sessions, I stood up and I was frustrated. I told them within the first week, maybe 2 weeks, that I was coming here and really hoping to get zapped by the straight gun and just go home. And, they're like, well, that's obviously not how it works. And, when they told me what the change that I should be looking for, it was just a totally different concept. But I guess I did kind of buy into it to the extent of, what they itemized. Well, you haven't had sex with a guy in, a month or 2 months, so that's progress. You haven't masturbated in 2 months because that's against the rules, so you're making progress. This is healthy. And so I guess I reluctantly tried to accept it and try to tell myself that, but it never really sunk in.
Did you tell anybody outside the program, whether it was your parents or perhaps your pastor or some of your friends, that you were changing, perhaps? Did you tell them perhaps a different story than you might have understood yourself?
Yes, honestly. My parents, I knew that they would be extremely disappointed, if I was there for that long of time, spent that much money with, their supposed help with the money, and it not work. And I guess I actually got to the point where I was a little bit defensive of Love in Action when people were critical. And I think that's another thing that I found out about being in there, is not only, connecting with that shame of what I've done, I started projecting that on other people in there. You're taught to challenge people in there when you see them doing something that's wrong or something against one of the 5,000 rules.
Right.
And I think it really gave me a very critical and almost hateful heart in there. But yeah, I did actually tell my parents that, I gave them the spiel, the whole Love in Action talking point, I'm slowly but surely, my attractions are changing, or they're fading away. I never said that I was attracted to a female. I said, but, these other things are going down. And in retrospect, I know exactly why. Part of myself was dying inside. I had just cut off emotionally this facet of myself. And you know, you hear these lies for 2 months, day in, day out, and you start to die inside.
Yeah.
And you start feeling empty. And so a lot of these people inside here who say that their attractions are so much less, I believe with all my heart it's because that they are attempting and have successfully killed off part of themselves, or at least put it in a coma. Because I know since I've been out of the program, I've been able to start accepting myself, you know, with affirming friends, affirming family members, you know, people in my life, you know, dating someone who loves me for who I am in my past.
I just have one more question, and if you feel uncomfortable answering, that's okay. But how is your relationship with your parents today?
That is a good question. I actually, for my birthday on January 19th, my mom sent me this really beautiful card. You know, the first 2 pages had all this mushy stuff, and on the last page it had a couple sentences that really, really touched me. It says, you know I've tried to change you, and I know I've tried to make you be what I want, you know, you to be, but you know, I love you still and regardless. And that meant a lot to me. And you know, it's easy to buy a card at Hallmark and, you know, send it, but part of me thinks that in the last 6 years, I came out to my parents 6 years ago, that maybe slowly but surely they are evolving, you know. I talked to my mom right before I left Des Moines to come to Memphis, and she was a little bit, didn't want to talk about it, a little flustered that I was coming down here. You know, what are you doing? You know, why are you? Especially when I told her that, you know, there might be, you know, media. She wants, we're kind of on a don't ask, don't tell policy.
Right.
I know my mom loves me with all of her heart, and so does my dad.
Yeah.
But as long as we don't talk about it, you know, we get along just great. You know, I mentioned, you know, coming up the 4th of July or Thanksgiving, you know, I will have been in a relationship for, you know, 9 months or a year at that point. And what happens if I want to bring, you know, my boyfriend and possibly eventual partner home for dinner? How is that going to work? And my mom's last thing she's told me before I come down here is, well, we'll just have to talk about that when it gets closer to the 4th of July.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a rocky road, but I think and I believe with all my heart that we're making progress.